this box, I have a brand new KBS large 17-in-1 bread machine. It's a 2-pound all stainless steel bread maker. I ordered this from Amazon. I'm getting ready to unbox it, and I thought I'd bring you along. So let's see what's in the box. And you'll want to stick around to the end because I'm actually going to make a loaf of bread in it and show you how that turns out. I'll also share my recipe. I've been making bread in bread machines for over 10 years. And my bread machine that I currently have, I bought used and it's wore out. So I ordered a new one. Has a box inside of this bigger box. So here's what the box looks like. I'm so excited to have a new bread machine. And I really hope I like this one. Okay. So right on top, we have an oven mitt. Very pretty, polka dots and a pink plaid design. And then here we have the owner manual. And then here we have a recipe book. And then this is a quick start guide for bread maker. Okay, the next piece here is a piece of styrofoam on top. It seems to be packed very well. There's probably an easier way to get that out of the box. It is stainless steel, which I like because that matches my other appliances. It's black on top. I like this handle for the door. It does seem to be packed very nicely, which is good because I don't like it when I receive things that are damaged. Okay, here's a little pack of, looks like there's a measuring cup. Oh, it even gives you a measuring spoon. It has 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon, and it even has a little, you probably can't see this, but has little ridges on there so you could get a 1/2 tablespoon and a 1/2 teaspoon. That's pretty handy. And here is the paddle. And I'm not sure what this is unless it is stirrer that it talked about. Oh, it comes with an extra paddle. Now that is nice to have. They are exactly alike, so I have an extra paddle because that's something you could easily lose. And then it has this little measuring cup. It goes up to 1 cup and it's broken down in ounces. It even goes down to 1/8 of a cup. And then this is the fruit and nut dispenser. Now I've never had a bread machine that had one of these separately. I imagine that hooks up here. Now this has a ceramic bread pan. My other bread machine, I'm pretty sure, has a stainless steel. I'm not sure, but see how it's white on the inside? It's ceramic, and there's the little stem where your bread paddle goes on. It's made similar to my other bread pan. And then here I'll show you the inside. You can see it has a heating element. When you put the pan in, I think you twist it to lock it, which is different from my other one. Yes, you do twist it to lock it in. My other one just snaps in. This one twists a little, just slightly. Has a window on top here. 17 different functions. It does soft bread, sweet bread, natural sourdough. That's interesting. French bread, whole wheat bread, quick bread, sugar-free, multigrain, milky loaf. Interesting. Cake, raw dough, levain dough, which I would think would be similar to sourdough. Jam, you can make jam in it. Bake only if you just only want to bake. Yogurt. That would also be interesting to see what the temperature settings are for the yogurt because I make homemade yogurt. Gluten-free and ferment. And here you choose your loaf size, your color, and this is the button for the menu. The start, stop, and pause button, and this plus or minus probably takes you up and down the menu. I don't know, we'll plug it in and see, and looks nice. So let's plug it in and see what it looks like when it's plugged in. Okay, I wanted to show you what the menu looks like. It lights up. It doesn't stay lit after you set it, but it lights up, so it's easy to see. And then there's a button here called menu, and if you'll look here where it says, okay, now it says menu 2, and as you hit the menu button, it cycles through the 17 functions that are in the menu. And I want menu 1, which is soft bread, which would also be the same thing as white bread. And as you can see here, it has 1 pound, 1.5 pound, and 2 pound, and the menu measures it as grams. And here is the crust color, and here's the button that changes that. And I usually do light crust, but I'm going to make a loaf of bread. I wanted to show you all the settings and how the menu worked. Now this button here adds time. So like if you want it, that doesn't add baking time, that is a delay. So if you want to delay how long your bread makes. So here is the quick start guide that came with the bread maker. It gives you some tips about flour and yeast. It recommends using boiling water that has been cooled to room temperature. And it even talks about the acidity of the water. I use filtered water. You don't want to use plain tap water because that could have a lot of fluoride, chlorine, and stuff in it that might mess up your yeast. And it has a whole list here of frequently asked questions and troubleshooting what might have been wrong with your bread. So this little book actually has some good information in it. Okay, it also came with this little recipe book. A lot of these have ingredients that I don't normally use. Hamburger and hot dog rolls, pasta, rye bread, all kinds of recipes. And I am going to be trying some of these recipes, and I'll try to make videos on them just because I would like to know how they would turn out. And here we have the user manual. Of course, it's going to tell you all the common sense things. It's actually pretty good, the instructions in that manual. I have washed my bread pan. The paddle is in place. You don't want to forget your paddle because if you do, your bread won't mix. And we are going to make a loaf of bread. And be sure and watch this video here, or here, I'm not sure which way it'll appear. I have a video on bread machine bread for beginners, and I have lots of details and tips in that video. You'll want to be sure and watch that. And in this video, I'm just going to make my normal bread recipe. First of all, we want to add 1 1/3 cups of liquid. Now I'm using water. If you want to use a liquid milk, then add 1 1/3 cups of liquid milk. I'm going to be using powdered milk, which is dry milk. So I'm just going to use water. So you're going to want to put 1 1/3 cup of water or liquid. And then a lot of recipes will call for butter. I'm going to be using oil, and I'm going to use 2.5 tablespoons of oil. I have used butter. Butter works great. Oil is just easier to measure, and it makes great bread, so I just use oil. I'm going to add that to my water because it is a liquid. Now we are going to put our flour on top of the liquid, making kind of a floating bed of flour. There's 1 cup. I'm going to use 3 cups of flour, and this is a bread flour that I'm using. Yes, you can use all-purpose flour. You may not have bread that rises quite as high, but it will work. All-purpose flour just does not have the same amount of gluten as bread flour. So now there is 3 cups of flour, And I'm going to make sure, very gently spreading it around to cover all the little liquid spaces so that I can put my other dry ingredients on top of that floating bed of flour. Now, we are going to add 2.5 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to have to wash my measuring spoons because they have oil on them. So I want 2.5 tablespoons of sugar, and I'm going to put it in one corner. There's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and a half tablespoon in that corner. Okay, and now I want 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And I use pink Himalayan salt. You can use any kind of salt you want. I'm going to put it in a different corner. So the sugar's in this corner, the salt's in that corner, and I'm going to use 2.5 teaspoons of active yeast, dry yeast, bread machine yeast, just as long as it is active dry yeast. So here's my 1/2 teaspoon. 1, 2, making 2.5 teaspoons of yeast. And I put that in a separate corner. Now this is my dry milk, and I am going to add 1/4 cup of dry milk. I'm going to put that in this corner over here. So now I have all my ingredients in my pan. So I'm going to put this in the bread machine on the soft bread setting. I'm going to use the 1.5 pound loaf setting, and I am going to use light crust setting, and we will see how this turns out. Now I'm going to bring you over and let you see what it looks like inside. Don't be afraid to raise the lid and look at your dough as it is mixing, because if your dough is way too wet or way too dry, then you're going to need to add a little liquid. So this dough actually looks pretty good. See, this is what your dough should look like. It should, as it mixes, it should form a ball. And this machine in particular so there are 2 KBS bread machines out there on Amazon that are very similar. One has 19 settings and the other has 17 settings. This one has 17 settings, and it costs more than the one with the 19 settings. But this one has a stronger motor, which I felt like was important, especially if you're going to make any kind of bread that might have a stiffer dough. So that is why I chose this one. So we're going to let this go. I'm trying to get that to light up. I don't know if you can see that. So it's already counting down. Our bread is almost finished. It should be beeping any moment now, and we'll be taking it out of the bread machine. And I just wanted to take a minute to tell you, I did find out what this is. This is called a hook, and it's used to put up inside of the paddle if your paddle comes out in your bread, to pull it out with, because it'll be very hot and you're supposed to take it out immediately. And another thing that I wanted to tell you was the manual said to take the stirrer, the paddle, out of the bread before the bake cycle. And I was going to do that. I kind of watched it as it went through the different phases, but I decided not to, because after the 3rd rise, it then goes into bake. And if you disturb your dough at that point, it is going to cause the bread to fall a little bit. And I did not want to disturb the bread before it baked. So I recommend taking the paddle out after the 2nd stir, because that is the last stir. That's on the soft bread cycle. I don't know if the other cycles have different stirs, but whatever the last stir is, take it out after that completes. That way you won't disturb any kind of, the rising of the bread, and won't cause it to fall. I just wanted to give you that little tip. So our beeper has gone off. Our bread is ready. Let's take it out. Can be a little tricky to get the handle raised up so that you can get a hold of it. And I actually use this little hook for that as well. And you twist it. It's pretty tight, and then lift it out. So here's our bread. It looks wonderful. This is what I wanted, bread that rose up about here to the top of the pan. Sometimes your bread may raise higher, but if it rises too high, it usually will fall and sink. It's best if you just have a nice even rise, not one that is too high. And we're just going to take it out. I usually slide it out on its side. And look, the paddle actually stayed in the pan, so I don't have to worry about fishing it out. Now I'm really liking the color of this bread, so I'll lay these over here. I used the light crust bread setting, and I really like the color of this bread. It looks like it did really well. We're going to let this cool for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we will slice it, and I'll show you what that looks like. I usually take a cotton towel and I just wrap it lightly while it's cooling, and then I come back after it's cooled. Our bread is cool and it's time to slice it up. So this is a bread slicer that I got some years ago at a thrift store. You can buy bread slicers online. I will leave a link below in the description to Amazon, an associate link where you can order a bread slicer. It wouldn't be exactly like this, but they do have bread slicers. And I'm also going to leave a link for the KBS bread maker, because I'm very happy with how this bread turned out. It's very important that you let your bread cool before you slice it, because if you try to slice it when it's really hot, it will collapse and you won't like the texture. So make sure it's, mostly cooled. This is still warm. It may actually be a little too warm, but it's cool enough to slice. And your bread slicer, just so you know, will usually be raised up on one end and lower on one end. And you want to start slicing on the high end. This will keep your slices nice and even. And just another tip, as you're slicing your bread, let the knife do the work. Don't try to push it and force it, but let the knife do the work. That'll also keep you from squashing your bread. So here's our bread. I'm just going to take out a slice here. Oh, it has a beautiful crumb and a beautiful texture. I am very pleased. It's not doughy. Sometimes if you had too much liquid in your bread or not enough flour, it might be a little doughy on the top or on the bottom. This texture is very good. I'm very pleased. It's so soft. It's just like very nice sandwich bread that you would buy in the store. And I'm just going to tear off a little corner here and taste it. It's just delicious. I am very pleased with the KBS 17-in-1 bread maker. So I've made my sandwich bread. I'm very happy in how it turned out. It just has a beautiful crumb, a beautiful texture. The holes are not too big. You don't want bread with great big holes. It's not sandwich bread anyway. So be sure and watch my other video on making sandwich bread in the bread machine. I'm going to put that right here.